Hello everybody, welcome back to Beskidy. Grandpa, we're busy working trying to figure out how to haul logs. Last episode was really a disaster in my mind. We headed out here to the trees and we got ourselves some logging equipment. Here we are out in the forest. And really kind of had a disaster. I think we cut three trees, one of which is over here. There was another one over here, maybe two, or was there one over in here? I can't remember where all they were. Here, and here. And we cut the trees down. And I had thought we could use this contraption kind of on the front loader here of a tractor. That would be a little bit easier than the grappling hook, on the back of another version of this trailer. I think there is something there you can lift the logs into the trailer. I thought this would be easier. Let's see here, like if you put M, okay, there are so many key binding confusions on here. So many different options, probably can't help but have different things going on. But it just, in my mind, it was a disaster. Partway through the episode, the front loaders disappeared, and it was just kind of hanging out here. Our hook kind of still worked, but it just wasn't optimum. Because, and the other problem is grass is so miserable tall. It was hiding, part of the logs, that we had cut. I couldn't find them. It was on a slope. I couldn't hardly manage a tractor to pick them up. We were having trouble with some of the collisions on here. I think we all know the physics on the older versions of this game. Oh, hey, I just noticed there's a waterfall over here. That's kind of cool. I'm seeing it from a distance. Anyway, the physics on these older versions of the game really left a lot to be desired. And while the forest mod is an incredible mod, when you open the thing up and you see what they accomplished and put in there, I mean, it just blows my mind, that a couple modders were able to put all that together in terms of the scripts and the models and everything. It's just a brilliant mod. But the limitations of the game itself, probably, I could be wrong, I'd have to look up some YouTube videos, but probably limited the number of people who played with it, because it's just so miserable hard to pick these silly things up. So, but as you'll see in here, I have a trailer, I have several logs in it, and no, I didn't pick up a single one of them with this grapple hook here on the front. I think eventually in here we're going to be selling that, taking it back. Don't even want to try it. The last one, after seeing how hard it was to try to pick the things up, I said we got to do something different. And frankly, I didn't know what that would mean. There was a part of me that said delete the logs out of your save game file. Pretend like you didn't start logging, get rid of the equipment, bring back the old trees and just forget it, screw it, because it just was too cumbersome. I thought at one point of getting some of the different equipment in the forest mod, and maybe some of it would have worked better. I mean, I did seek out an entirely separate mod for this grappling hook. I just figured it'd be a little bit easier based on how my fingers work, and what I did for Farm Sim 15 when logging came along, in game. But what I really wanted to see if I could do is figure out a way to auto-load logs onto the trailer. And I know I spent a whole bunch of time in a previous episode, maybe multiple episodes, talking about auto-loading bales. There were some mods that I had that didn't quite work as advertised, where they would pick up bales and put them on the trailer. So we spent some time on that until it worked. And, it took a bunch of elbow grease because to my knowledge, there was no existing autoload log trailer out there. And now I think we have one. So I chose to put, it took a script, it took some model changes, it took, a few things like that. And I chose to just put it to our existing trailer. And, just to show you here real quick, that it works. If we pull this open, let me get on the trailer. Yeah, not on that. Okay, here's our commands. We have load logs, unload logs, show unload area, unload side. I even added different sides. In FarmSim 15, there would be a log auto-loading trailer, and you could choose, which side you wanted to unload. So let me just say, show the unload area. So I'm going to hit the right control key, and I borrowed, that's a cell trigger. I just pulled it straight out of a map, imported it in here, and you can, using the U key, toggle it between the areas as to where you want to unload the logs. So this just kind of shows where they're going to land. And the N to load, you hit the B key. Let me see if I can keep from... So it's going to grab them and just kind of dump them in there. And it's kind of indiscriminate how it puts them in there. The out one sitting over the front. I think I picked them all up off of the ground. So actually you can see it is still loading. So there isn't anything that tells it to quit. So I'm going to turn it off. To unload, remember we are over on the left, so let me just start unloading a few, and it's going to start dumping them right in the middle there. And anyway, I can stop at any time. Yeah, so I believe, actually, let me change it to like the other side, and we'll just unload a few over there, so we know that it works. Let me just kind of load them back up again here. It should pull from either side. And it really, it's doing what I'd like it to do, which is load the logs. Now maybe we've already overfilled it. I don't know. But it also has, and this was in the original, there is within the trailer, if you pop open the mod, there's a trigger that sits in here, and I believe the purpose of it is to lock the load or to hold it steady. So I was testing this before this episode, so let me just give it a try here. I don't think there's anything we need to turn on, but I think it should hold it. It should hold it solid no matter what bumps we're going over. And as you can see, it's not, it's wanting to interfere with. So I mean, here's a bumpy road we're going on. We'll just kind of shift over here. I took it over the railroad tracks. I even had a train come along, and it plowed right through the middle of it, and every log still stayed firmly on the trailer. So it does work. And, in terms of locking it on there, and the best part, at least for me, is it doesn't lock it. See, my frustration with some of the locking scripts before, well, there it shifted a little bit. Let me get that back up here. Get up there. There we go. Some of my frustration with the locking scripts before is that you couldn't, once they were locked and loaded, so to speak, you couldn't hardly get the silly things off. And I think there was certain kinds of equipment, that would allow you to dip in there and get them. Now I almost wonder, this is speculation, I'd have to study the script, but notice when we slow down that's when the logs will shift a little bit. So I wonder if it's detecting movement as the time period when you need to have the load locked. And then when you stop, it unlocks it. Could be wrong. I'd have to study the script to figure that out. But anyway, I think that provides everything that we would want. I can load them, I can unload them, and so the only thing I haven't tried, which should be programmed properly in the map, is to make sure I can haul them to market and deliver them. And I may still create a trigger over by the sawmill or wherever I'm going to take these that allows me, just to drive through it, and it just peels them off the trailer. Because I know over there, the forestry mod created a sawmill, and it had this conveyor belt. It's really cool, all the stuff they set up. And so I'm a little worried that when I go to try to unload, I'm going to miss the conveyor, and it isn't going to haul the log in properly to get it sold and everything. So I may still need to do some modifications on that. But for the moment, that's kind of the basics of how things work, and so I at least wanted to show that. And I'm gonna step out of game for the moment and kind of go. Let me just save it while everything's in there. And I don't know if this is of interest to anybody or whatnot, but I'm gonna kind of go through some of the technical things that I did. In case anybody's interested, wants to try it on their game. I can show you what I did, and you can try to duplicate it if you want, if you're playing Farm Sim 13. But let me come over here. Here's a tree. This is one of the larger trees in the game. So I got the ad loaded up. I have the trailer itself loaded up so we can kind of see it in here. And I have the script. So how to talk about, the journey that I went through. Well, first off, I tried two things. I mentioned a little bit ago, Farm Sim 15 had an auto log loading trailer. Well, I grabbed the script off of it and I took it backwards to Farm Sim 13 to see if that would work. I actually had it in-gamed and was starting to work on it, but it was a way more complicated than I thought was needed or required. And see, you gotta understand, when the Giants put it in the game in 15, they did it in a totally different system than what we're used to dealing with up till that point. They are 3D objects, but they were called shape files. Or shape split shapes, if you will. And I really don't know what that means. All I know is when you cut timber in Farm Sim 15, the timber didn't end up in your regular save game file, where all your vehicles are and those kinds of things, which is where the bales would show up. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. If you pop open the vehicles, the vehicle's XML file, you'll see not only all your tractors and harvesters and everything, you will see bales in there and other types of objects. Not so with Farm Sim 15 Forestry. It was all stored in a separate, unreadable file. I don't know that anybody anywhere was ever able to look inside that. I'm sure the Giants had their own editor, but we couldn't. But there was some special Lua code that dealt with, the timber stuff, shape files. And so this script that I borrowed from Farm Sim 15 was loaded with things on shape files. And so I was going in there trying to adapt it to Farm Sim 13, which doesn't have shape files. In contrast, let me see if I can just find it here. Here's screenshots. That's in Farm Sim. Let me get over here and I'll just show. I think I'm in Save Game 2. If I load vehicles here. So this, kind of like I was saying, has all the tractors and everything up here. But then, here's all of our trunks, and things from the Forest mod. So it is storing all of them in here, which means we can access them differently than we did in Farm Sim 15. So I was trying to adapt the script to search our save game file. There's a way to do that. And I got it started working, but then I eventually just abandoned it and said, you know what? There's probably an easier way. If some of you also watch my videos on Farm Sim 11, there's a map I'm playing there called Feldy, and I'm starting to put timber on it, Farm Sim 11. and it's even more rustic then, but I did figure out I adapted a script, the bale attacher script, if you will, to pick up logs. So I said, well, Farm Sim 11 to 13, maybe I can bring it forward and use it. Well, it turns out I had to do a whole bunch of work in here, basically rewrite the whole thing, almost rewrite the whole thing, and eventually got it working like you just saw in game. But in terms of putting this on, some of the things that I had to do, the forest mod has one single mod.desk file, and in it is all the equipment that it has. So if you go down here, it has a store section somewhere. Oh, I'm down in the input binding. Ah, here it is. Somewhere down here in the store items is the junkari, however you say that. And I won't go try to find it here. I mean, it's somewhere in here. But let me just hide that again, the store items. So it defines all the different equipment, and then you have a section up in here. Like I say, this was a brand spanking new mod, so it was doing things that had never been done before in game and wouldn't be done thereafter because the Giants added it to their game. So all the vehicle types for everything they're doing, they are defining in here all the specializations and scripts that tell each one of these things what to do. So one of them down here, of course, is the chunk carry. I hope I'm saying that right. I have no idea. So it's defining, it's attachable, it's animated, cylindered, all these different things that it needs just to be a basic trailer, with nothing else. I mentioned a little bit ago in game it had load securing, so here you see the add-on coming in as a specialization. And while these up here are specializations that come with the game, the rest of these, this one and this one, are custom specializations designed, by the modder. So they designed a load securing script that's up here. Like I say, I haven't studied it in depth. I just popped it open in case I needed to see it, because for a while I didn't have it on there while I was testing. And then we added the bale attacher script. So if you haven't done this before, you can kind of see the format that is needed, kind of how they're put here, and then you'll see it's given a name. This name is what appears over in the XML file. So here's the junkari XML file. Here's the name up here. It must be spelled exactly the same, but that's how it knows what to look for. This vehicle type shows up over here. So that's kind of the link between the two, if you will. This notes it as a vehicle and says where to find the vehicle Lua file, which of course is part of the main engine. These things here I should have deleted, but they were specializations that were part of the Farm Sim 15. That script was called autoload wood. I believe it was made by a modder called Marhu. But I didn't end up needing these particular scripts. But these custom specializations, these are already in game, so it's going to know what to do when you put those in here. These others, it's only going to know what to do when you define them somewhere else. And up here is a section for all these specializations where you give it a name. And by the way, the name that you give it here is how you need to put it down here. So you'll notice bale attacher, which we're using for logs. Here's the one I put in here for mine. Bale attacher, that's the name. Class name is the name of the script that's inside it. So when you see bale attacher like over here, that's however this would read. That's what goes here. And then you got to give it a file name and tell where you put it. So I put this in the scripts folder, scripts with a K, and named it. This is inside the forest mod. So that's what you put in there. That tells the mod where the specialization is so it can load it. We just showed in the vehicle how you call it up on it. And then this particular mod has certain input bindings, has certain things that are going to appear in game that are managed by the script. So I put these in here. And of course, there's going to be something. These show up in the help box, that shows up in the upper left-hand corner, and it's going to show the toggle to load the logs, unload, to show the unload status, even whether you're loading or unloading. These are the things that show up as text kind of in game. And then I think one other item, I think it's at the bottom. Yeah, input bindings. These are all the input bindings where you put in there the definitions. And again, you got to be really careful on these because these are called up specifically in the script by these names. So you can give the category, you give a starting key, and of course the player can later modify that if they please. So those were all the things I had to put in the mod.esc file. Pretty simple when you've done it a few times, but I know if you haven't, it's often, I remember trying to do it for the first time, and it things that seem simple now were just very hard and took a long time and to figure out, and a lot of times you figured it out by looking at other people's mods or the Giants setup, although the Giants don't have mod.esc. So here's the XML file for our particular trailer, and in here I added only 3 things. There was a trigger that I'm using to detect the logs. That's kind of what we're using over in Farm Sim 11. And then there are nodes where you place the log or you load the log. This is a load, and then there's unload places. And remember, we had 3 places, left, right, and back. For loading, we just load it in one area, right over smack in the middle of the trailer, so we only need one of those. And these nodes, these are all things that get called up by this script over here, which I'll show in a second. But all of these, of course, need to be defined inside the file here. So I'll just show those real quick. So for example, load, actually, it's just in 2 areas, index 14 and 15. So we come down to here. I think that's 14. There's 014 index over here. And it's a trigger. And I took this straight off of the Farm Sim 11 version. It sits flush with the ground, so it isn't going to pick up. You don't want it above these, above the axles here, or the, whatever you call this, the spine of the trailer. You don't want it above the adder. It's going to detect all the logs that you have stacked in here, and it's going to continually go in a circle and keep loading them. And you want it to recognize the logs. So, this is it's a type of rigid body, and it's going to be noted as a trigger. It's kinematic because you want it to move with the trailer. You don't want it to stay. You don't want it as dynamic, meaning it's its own object and will flop around all over. It's going to move with the trailer. You don't want it static, which means it's going to stay just in one spot. So kinematic. Noted as a trigger. The collision mask, it's going to detect objects that have these boxes checked on them. 12, I think, is like a tractor or moving steerable equipment. 13, I think, is dynamic objects, which would include bales and, in our case, logs. Not sure with 24.1. I think these are all with the ground. But, if you pull open the trees, and like if you just grab this, maybe the next log up, this is one of the logs. If you look in here, it has several of these checked, and it at least has 12 and 13 checked. So we know that it will interact, over here with our trailer. So this is to pick them up, and then we got to do something in the Lua code with our trigger in order to get it to do something. But at first, it at least needs to recognize what is coming into or out of the trigger. So that's to add. Here's the 15 index. It's a simple transform. And this is the load point kind of over the trailer. And then this will be the left side over here. This is the right side. And then we got one in the back. And then we have hidden the, let me see, can I see it here? Yeah. Visibility. So here I put in the cell markers. They just kind of tag along with it, and they are in the off position, and the script will need to turn those on and off as needed. You don't want all of them on at the same time, because then you wouldn't know which side you're on. But that's kind of the basic setup done in here. I just found whatever parts I could, and I put them in here. Oh, and maybe there's one other thing I'll show too. One other modification I made in here. Is it here? No, not those. Collisions. This is where it's going to be a hard object that will interact with your logs so they don't flop out of the trailer. Actually, it isn't that one there that I was looking for. Collisions here. All right, these are the base and the end ones. So these are all solid objects. So what I did, I mean, the problem that I've had before when there's no load locking is maybe you can get the log in the trailer, but then as soon as you move forward, the silly thing wants to fall out the back. So what I did is I took the collision in front, I duplicated it, and I scooted it way into the back. And so I figured if the logs land in here, as I move forward, they're going to try to slide out. They're going to run right into this invisible collision object and will stop. Well, as it turns out, you know, I probably don't need, oh, and I added some floor pieces here, also invisible. I probably don't even need this because it's locking the load on there just fine, so I may eventually pull that out. Now, what this is going to prevent me from doing is if I ever back this into a shed, you know, I won't be able to push it all the way to the back. It's going to need some extra space, which will kind of look, you know, a little strange. But I wanted to be able to hold the logs on the trailer, and now I can. So this is the setup that I did in the i3D, or the model file, if you will. And that is all. Those are specified here. These are the only additions I really made to the XML file. But the reason I put them in there is the script over here needed this stuff. And, you know, this here, I think I ended up, what is it, 264 lines of code, if you will, putting it in here. I started with what I had over on Farm Sim 11, and, you know, it was totally different from what I have here in Farm Sim 13. Because in Farm Sim 11, the trees weren't their own distinct i3D files. See, this is in its own file, and the forest mod calls it up. So, whereas over in Farm Sim 11, the map file has tree objects in it. It's just a whole lot more rudimentary in Farm Sim 11. I have a feeling we could adapt it to cutting down trees, because there was in Farm Sim 09, somebody came up with a chainsaw mod. You could cut down trees and it would remember what you cut down. You could do stuff with them. Maybe I'll go that way eventually, I don't know. But for the moment, the trees are in the map, so it has to detect a map object rather than this here, which is its own i3D file. It sticks in the map, this tree, or lots of them, but it shows up on it's in an XML file where all these are stored. So I guess I say all that because once the trees are cut, you know, kind of as we saw a little bit ago, these trunks, and they just march up the line here, these trunks end up in the vehicle file. So the script had to be able to look for these in a particular way, and when they fall on the trigger, you know, to know that they're there. So let me see, where am I? Right here. So most scripts in this era, they always had, I don't know if they always had a prerequisites present, maybe they did, but you started with a table. Every script was defined in a table. You give it a name, and you put the open and close brackets, which means we are starting a table. It's called this, and then everywhere thereafter we're defining functions that are part of this table. So you'll see bale attacher by all these functions, and then there's a colon, and then there's a particular thing that's happening. This one up here is a little bit different. This is searching for specializations that are required in order to run this specialization. There are no others required, so we just say true. Return true so that it knows what to do. There's always going to be a load. And in this era, there was, maybe you have to have a read stream, write stream. You always had to have key event, always mouse. Maybe drop, update had to be there. I don't think you had to have update tick. And then there are self-defined functions in here that we added to it. That's what all these others are. Search objects and so forth and so on. The on detach, on activate, on deactivate, I think these are here because it... well, let me see. Where can I go to show this? Because it has an attachable specialization. Those show up. There goes a bell. Those show up in here. And then I think there's delete may have been required. I think it isn't required for load from attributes and nodes. This isn't like when you load the game. If there's anything in the save game file related to this script, it will go here. We didn't have to do that. Get save attributes and nodes. This is in here when you want to save something to the save game file. So I can't even articulate which ones are strictly required and which ones aren't. I would have to know a whole lot more than I do to be able to say that. All I know is that most of those, do appear in scripts of this era. And I think a lot of that has since changed in later versions. So with that, the bell just went. So I'm going to terminate the episode here. When we come back, I'll talk in more detail kind of about the script and kind of what's going on in here. Again, I don't know if that's people's interest. I like sharing it because, let me tell you, it was costly to me in terms of time, to figure some of this out. And it's a cobbled up thing, but it works. So that means a lot to me. And just in case somebody ever wanted to know kind of how to do this, there's a lot I had to just learn on my own. I did have a mentor that taught me some of this, but some of it is just school of hard knocks, figuring it out. And if this helps shortcut someone else's journey, if they want to do something similar, then hopefully this would be helpful. But for the moment, I'll bid you adieu, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.